and thanks to the Labour Party for tabling the motion. Minister, there is a sense of déjà vu about this debate because in the short while that I am in this House, we have had numerous discussions on this matter. Since 2011, when the Fine Gael government assumed office, this promise was first made. Here we are almost in 2020, and two things are common. The bill keeps rising, multiplying, and not a scrap of fibre is being laid under this contract. And actually, we don't even have a contract in place yet. So we've had this debate many times. I have highlighted on this side of the House, and many colleagues, the wastefulness, the dogged delays, the obfuscation, the failure to actually grasp the nettle on this issue and examine the many ways in which this can be done without having recourse to the current arrangements. As Vice Chair of the Communications, Environment and Climate Action Committee, all over the previous summer alone, we scrutinised and studied this proposal in some detail. Without going into all the recommendations of the committee found a number of recommendations, over a dozen direct actions to arise from a detailed scrutiny, and none of those recommendations was to endorse the tender or to endorse the government's plan. In actual fact, by majority vote, that was rejected by the dedicated Oireachtas committee, which is tasked with scrutinising this very tender. As one flavour of the findings arising from that, we have a scenario where we are proposing to throw €3 billion of taxpayers' money at a consortium, what appears to be a finance house with a couple of subcontractors hanging off it, and certainly no proven track record in delivery of broadband or indeed other infrastructure, at a time, and I carry a flag for no particular bidder, but at a time when AIR arrived into committee to tell us they could do the whole thing for less than $1 billion. So, if nothing else, we're paying on the treble. And for a project where there hasn't yet been a line of fibre or a channel of ducting even dug just yet. As it's been obfuscated, misapplied. The entire project has been mismanaged, I think, from the outset. Yet here we are 9 years in and no closer to any decision. But all the while this interminable negotiation has been progressing, and all this tender business, unseemly business, the technology has been advancing, and in fact the very purpose of the tender I think is now called into question, because while these interminable negotiations have been ongoing, the private sector has been penetrating of its own accord into those areas through different technology sets, through different technology mixes, and through getting their sleeves rolled up and getting on with it. The Minister a few moments ago talked about the 540,000 houses still to be connected. A previous minister, perhaps 2 years ago, would have talked about 800,000 homes to be connected, and perhaps the next minister will tell us about 300,000 houses, and so on ad infinitum. And we get to a point where we might have, I'm not sure what the final number would be, but what is certainly clear is the number of homes to be targeted by a state intervention is reducing at exactly the same time as the cost of that intervention is multiplying exponentially. On the matter of cost, my colleagues already referred to. We know the views of the Department of Public Expenditure. Mr. Robert Watt has done the Statesman service, putting those views on record, and I commend him. I commended him in committee, I commend him in the House as well, again tonight, for putting on record that the cost-benefit does not actually stack up. This is a project which could break the bank effectively, especially when read against the Children's Hospital and all the other wasteful and wanton projects that are being commissioned by this government. But on the raw figures, again, we see Imagine. I believe are now posing a challenge because they have rolled out alternative technologies with their 5G solutions. We know it's well documented that how AIR came into the 800,000 and took away 300,000 homes because they can do them anyway. And every step of the way, a new provider, a new system, a new technology is coming in to the intervention area and saying, actually, we can do it anyway. We can actually do it commercially. There is no need to throw money at the problem. State money that's hard-earned and hard-got when other alternative solutions exist. We have missed the opportunity to take positive, practical steps along the way. I have introduced legislation. There have been many different initiatives. There have been multiple task forces delivered by the Minister's predecessors, by the Department. We have had 3 different task forces on the delivery of rural broadband and indeed mobile telephony, which is under the same area. We have had multiple practical recommendations, very, very few of which have actually been enacted. Each Minister seems to come along and reheat them and put them in the microwave and take out the report again a year later and announce such great fanfare, but without actually doing anything of it. As I mentioned, I have drafted legislation which tackles many of the practical heart of these issues, such as planning permissions requiring fibre to the doorstep rather than the roadside, such as the fact that ducting is actually so expensive to lease from the likes of Transport Infrastructure Ireland. It's actually cheaper to dig up the road yourself rather than hire ducting even within 2 state agencies. These kind of absurd anomalies, conflicting local area plans, arcane planning processes, a lack of a streamlined fast track for this kind of infrastructure. These all combine to make it more difficult for the private sector to get in, and yet they're doing it anyway, and they're doing it faster, quicker, cheaper than the state intervention would as yet even pass go. Minister, I'm going to conclude because I'm going to move to my colleagues, but I'm going to make one final point. My party passed a motion on this 18 months ago. As I've introduced legislation on this 2 years ago. There's been multiple attempts on this side of the House, be it in legislation, be it in private members' motion, be it in other ways, to have these issues tackled. We've all heard sorry sagas about voting on all sides of the House in the last couple of days. But what is beyond doubt is that this government have debased the voting system. This government have actually done a disservice to democracy by ignoring every motion, every vote, every private member's bill that's been introduced on any other side of the chamber. And that is a disservice to democracy.
Deputy Jackie Cahill.